The impact of World War II on fashion is profound, as the war dramatically reshaped not only the global socio-political landscape, but also the way people dressed. This period led to significant changes in fashion, from material shortages to the emergence of new styles that would define the post-war era. The war's influence can be broken down into several key phases: the immediate effects during the war years, the responses of designers, and the lasting consequences that shaped the future of fashion. Before the war, fashion was dominated by opulence, with designers like Coco Chanel, Elsa Schiaparelli, and Madeleine Vionnet leading the way in the 1930s. Paris was the fashion capital, and haute couture was a symbol of wealth and luxury. The era was characterized by flowing dresses, wide skirts, and an emphasis on feminine shapes. This was the tail end of the golden age of couture, where the latest Parisian designs were highly sought after by elite women across the world. However, with the outbreak of World War II in 1939, the entire world plunged into uncertainty. This had immediate effects on the fashion industry. As countries mobilized for war, everyday life changed drastically. In Europe, especially in France and England, rationing, scarcity of materials, and a disrupted supply chain forced fashion to adapt quickly. One of the most significant impacts of the war on fashion was the rationing of materials. With resources diverted to support the war effort, fabrics like silk, wool, and cotton became scarce. Leather, often used for gloves, shoes, and accessories, was in short supply. Governments across Europe and the United States imposed restrictions on the use of fabric, and in countries like England, people were urged to make do and mend their clothing. In Britain, the government implemented a system where the production of civilian clothing was heavily restricted. The British Board of Trade, under the leadership of Sir Stafford Cripps, introduced the utility line of clothing, which was designed to be functional and economical, using as little material as possible. These garments were often simple, with minimal decoration, and were produced under strict guidelines. The government also imposed limits on the number of buttons, pleats, and other decorative elements that could be used in garments. In France, although rationing was less severe in the early years of the war, it eventually took its toll on the haute couture houses. The industry faced immense challenges as resources became scarcer. Many designers, such as Christian Dior, whose iconic New Look would come after the war, had to be innovative in their approach to design, making use of fewer materials without sacrificing style. The wartime years saw a shift from the extravagance of the 1930s to the austerity of the 1940s. Fashion became more utilitarian, with women adopting simpler, more practical styles. The glamorous gowns of the pre-war era gave way to dresses that were more modest and often less voluminous. Skirts were shortened, and waistlines were moved up to conserve fabric. The impact of wartime austerity on women's fashion can be seen in several key elements. Shorter hemlines. In the early 1940s, women's skirts and dresses became shorter as a way to conserve fabric. This was both a practical measure and a way to create a more functional style for women who had to take on more responsibilities at home and in the workforce during the war. While the hemlines were still relatively conservative compared to later years, this change marked a departure from the long, sweeping skirts of the 1930s. These dresses were made from inexpensive, rationed fabrics and were designed to be simple, functional, and easy to wear. They typically had minimal embellishments and used clever tailoring techniques to create flattering silhouettes while conserving fabric. Military influence. With men away at war, women began to take on traditionally male roles in the workforce, and their clothing reflected this shift. Pants, trousers, and overalls became more common, especially for women working in factories or other labor-intensive jobs. The look was practical, with an emphasis on comfort and ease of movement, yet it also carried an element of masculinity in terms of tailoring and structure. The desire for practicality led to a significant change in women's wardrobe choices. Women were no longer just focused on glamour. They had to adapt to new roles and environments, which included wearing more functional clothing that suited their wartime tasks. Despite the difficulties posed by the war, some designers continued to create new collections, albeit on a smaller scale. In Paris, where haute couture houses were forced to shut down or reduce their activities, many designers relocated to the United States or to neutral countries, where they could continue to work and show their collections. Coco Chanel was one of the most famous designers who had to navigate the wartime restrictions. During the war, she closed her couture house, but she continued to work behind the scenes. Chanel's decision to return to fashion after the war in 1954 was met with controversy, particularly due to her connections with the German occupation during the war. However, she remained one of the most iconic figures in fashion history. Christian Dior, who would later revolutionize fashion with his New Look in 1947, worked during the war as a designer for the fashion house of Philippe et Gaston. His early designs were restrained by the austerity of the war, but laid the groundwork for the more extravagant designs he would present after the war. Elsa Schiaparelli continued to make fashion statements during the war, but like other designers, she faced shortages of materials. Her designs became more pragmatic and less luxurious, but she still managed to incorporate elements of surrealism, which made her pieces stand out. The most significant shift in fashion came after the war ended in 1947, when Christian Dior presented his first collection for his newly founded fashion house. This collection became known as the New Look and was a dramatic departure from the austerity of wartime fashion. The New Look featured full skirts, cinched waists, and soft feminine silhouettes that emphasized the curves of the female form. Dior's New Look was an immediate success and was seen as a symbol of post-war recovery and renewal. It marked the return of luxury to fashion and was celebrated for its glamorous hourglass silhouette. The New Look also marked the end of the more practical and utilitarian wartime styles. The use of luxurious fabrics, full skirts, and voluminous dresses was a stark contrast to the austerity of the 1940s. Dior's New Look faced some criticism, especially in the United States, where women were still dealing with material shortages and financial hardship. The extravagant designs were seen by some as out of touch with the realities of the time. However, the New Look became a symbol of post-war optimism and the desire to return to the glamour and luxury of the pre-war years. In the years following the war, Parisian haute couture became synonymous with luxury, sophistication, and elegance. The 1950s saw the rise of icons like Audrey Hepburn and Grace Kelly, who embodied the glamour of the era. Paris remained the center of the fashion world, but the influence of American fashion grew stronger as well, especially with the rise of ready-to-wear collections and the increasing importance of Hollywood. The war had also opened up new markets for designers, as many European couturiers began to expand their reach to the United States and other countries. This period marked the beginning of the globalization of fashion, with international brands and designers gaining more recognition and influence. The influence of World War II on fashion extended well beyond the immediate post-war years. The war had fostered a sense of resilience and creativity in the fashion industry. Designers had learned to adapt to scarcity, and as a result, they were able to innovate in ways that would shape fashion for decades to come. The war and its aftermath led to the rise of ready-to-wear fashion, which became increasingly popular as the demand for more practical and affordable clothing grew. Ready-to-wear collections allowed designers to reach a wider audience and made high-fashion garments more accessible. The role of women in fashion. The war also marked a significant shift in the role of women in society, which was reflected in fashion. Women had taken on more active roles in the workforce, and as a result, their clothing needed to accommodate this new reality. Pants, trousers, and more practical styles continued to be popular after the war, and the influence of menswear continued to grow in women's fashion. The wartime fashion period continues to influence designers and fashion trends today. Elements of wartime fashion, such as military-inspired styles, utility dresses, and the use of creative alternatives to scarce materials, can still be seen in contemporary collections. World War II left an indelible mark on the fashion world. From material shortages to the development of new styles and the eventual return to luxury after the war, the fashion industry was forever changed. The war forced designers to be creative and adaptive, and the lasting effects of these innovations can still be seen today. The post-war years ushered in a new era of fashion, one that combined glamour and practicality and laid the foundation for the fashion industry as we know it today. The war and its aftermath demonstrated the resilience and creativity of the fashion world, as well as its ability to reflect the broader social, political, and cultural changes of the time.